So let me introduce Dr. Yongning Wu. He had a long experience as researcher, professor, and director of different structures for the 80s. He is currently the head of the WHO Collaborating Center for Food Contamination Monitoring in China, but also Chief Technical Officer and Professor at the China National Center for Food Safety Risk Assessment and Director of the National Health Commission Key Lab for Food Safety Risk Assessment and Food Safety Research Unit for the Chinese Academy of Medical Science. So, Dr. Professor, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Chair. I'm very glad to be here to present the China experience. Okay, before have the Chinese total diet start, just a little bit introduction what structure in China. And in China, then we are the National Health Commission, much do the risk assessment, and we have the Minister of Agriculture and the state administration of the market regulation to enforce the food safety regulation. And now we do the risk assessment and set the for the safety standard. And okay. That was the structure in my agency. For the CEFSA, you see your European have the European for the Safety Authority called the EFSA. In China, then we just have the exact name was risk assessment. Then we call, but the sample size just called the CEFSA, then change E to C. So we much partner structure with the EFSA and the BFR. No. And that was the core work was make the 7 plan and collect data. After that, then we do all the risk assessment, use the risk assessment outcome to set up the national standard, and also we are do the China nutrition surveillance. That was the make quite a lot of works and networks. Now, just briefly introduction the China total studies. Actually, China, then we have the finished 6 Chinese total diet studies, and this year we beginning 7th Chinese total diet studies. This was the first was the lead by Professor Junshi Chen, was the first and the second one. From the third one, I lead the Chinese total diet studies, and in the first one, we beginning in 1919. At that time, we only do the poor sample, the complexity sample. Then when I take over there, we are not only have the poor sample, but also we have the individual sample. Then we expand the contaminants, nutrients, and we expand the province. And at this time, we just have the, in China, we all together with the 31 province, we take the 24 province. This is not include Hong Kong. Hong Kong do their own total studies. Okay, in China, then we total studies was the first would like to establish the data intake of the chemical contaminants and some nutrients, especially for elements, and even have the fatty acid and this bioresistance in China. Then we provided the scientific data for specific for the safety risk assessment project, and developing of the food safety regulation, especially for the standard set up the maximum limit for the contaminants in food. Then we also would like to identify the priority pollutant for national food surveillance by using non-target screen method to identify the contaminants, then go to the national surveillance for individual food. And we just would like to monitor the trade of the chemical contaminants in the local diet. And I just would like to introduce the just finished the 6 Chinese total data studies. Then we make the plan almost for 6 months, define the objection of the diet, TTS, then collect data, then developing the food list for the aggregation, for the sampling, for the analytical plan, then organize staff to get the training. In China, then at this time, we just carry out the Chinese total studies. We cover almost 5 years for total data studies. So that means every year, then we finished the 4 to 5 province. That means we got the sampling in these 4 years. Then last year, then we get the analyze. So we sampling from 24 province. In China, then all food, not to like Western food. Most food need cooking in home. So that means we need the kitchen in the province laboratory to do the cooking according to the local province. China is much diversity, much bigger. So each province, the diet is still diversity. Then we just each province follow local recipe menu to cooking the food. We make the pooling of the sample, but we still for the each individual sample also storage in the refrigerator. That means we have the both composite sample by pooling, or we have individual sample by not pooling. And then all this sample from province transport to CEFSA. we storage here, then we analyze quite a lot of contaminants and nutrients. We distribution to one China National Reference Laboratory to do analyze. Each contaminant may be in one laboratory. To do the analyze, after that, we have the validate, we carry out risk assessment for the diet assessment, then compare to health-based guiding value. After that, we will be published the book. Now we published both in one book in Chinese and English. Then we put in the website, we distribution our results in conference. We write the scientific article and share that with the WHO, FAO, and some colleagues, for example, EFSA, BFR. In China, then we just have the, according to all the food category, we have the 30 category. First was the cereals, second was the legume and the lettuce, third one was potato, then was the meat, egg, fish, and here milk, vegetable, fruit, sugar, and the confidence. Then beverage that not included alcohol, then alcohol beverage. Finally was the condiments. Just because the China, we are cook the food in the home, use the condiment. So the condiment we are distribute into this 12 food group. So that means finally we pour in the food into 12 food group. For the condiments, included the salt, cook oil into this 12 food group. Then that was what we have done in this 5 years workshop. First, we will be do the Chinese dietary service, got all the food consumption server, use the individual food consumption by the go to the home and also get the questionnaire. Then we got the food group. After the food group, we make aggregation for the less than 5% in this group. We aggregate to the similar food. Then we got the 40 groups. Then developing the sampling list. After this sampling list, we go to the 24 provinces. Each province, we will be 1 or 2 cities and 2 or 4 villages, the countryside. If the population in this province more than 30 million people, then we have 6, that means 2 cities, 4 countryside. If less than this one, we get 1 city, 2 countryside. All the together we get the more than 100, was 106 sampling set. Then we got a sampling each year. Almost we get the less 6 provinces each year. Then we get a sampling over there. After sampling, we make the coffee in the kitchen. Then prepare for the blending, for the pouring, then restoring into the pouring sample for the composite and individual sample. Plus 12 food group. That was the composite. After this composition, including the composite, first we analyze the composite sample in the laboratory. If necessary, then we go to the individual sample analyze. All this together, we got the diet exposure. And for the food consumption server, always we make in advance. That means we need the 3 long constituted twice record service. We can do the face-to-face questionnaire. This we must have the 2 working days, and 1 is the weekend, Saturday or Sunday. Select 1 day. And besides the 12 record service, also we go to the home to do the 3D household service, including to waiting and recorded mean for condiment. Actually, for example, go to family to salt, to waiting the salt, cocoa oil, and the drink water. Then we also use the frequent food frequency questionnaire. Then also we save the cocktail method because Chinese meal much complex for the cocktail menu. Then we need the great challenge to finish this challenge. Then we get the frequency for each ages, each gent, then combine the aging and the genting group, divide the different for the consumption data. And second thing, just we have taught for the aggregation. For each category, each group food, if we collect every food, that's difficult. In China, for vegetable, we have the more than thousands and thousands of vegetable. Quite Chinese eating almost most plant as a vegetable. So that means we need to crystallize some similar food into one positive food in each province. That means if less than 5% weighted on the weighted, then we aggregate to the similar food, and then we calculate the average daily consumption for each food categories by adults male in each province. That means if we need to compare, then we have a standard Chinese man and the standard provincial man. This was the most for the first one. And the second, then we got the age gent combined group. Then we just draft simply search recipe and formulate of the composition preparation. That means, for example, for potato, then we have the sweet potato, the conception, and the Vienna potato, and the total amount. Then we call it the Chinese total data start for the consumption data for the managed system. Then everything was that make it 2-bit digit. That was the what we can have the 12 for the categories. Actually, third one then this was the 12 the category for the category for each group for each province we have. Okay, after we aggregation got the list, then we got the food sampling. The sampling just we have the depends on the population. If more than 15 million, then we have the 6 city sites. For the rural to amber, if less than 15 million population, we get the 3 set for each province. And in each 7 city, food sampling was patched at the local food market, like supermarket, Fairgrace, garage store. Even we go to the traditional food market, like a farm market and the local market. After sampling, for the sample was required to take to the province laboratory kitchen. Over there, cooked and processed the side as soon as possible. This food preparation just we have the in the market we collect simply the food real sample. Then if for the different sampling set, then we mix the some sample. After that, then we cook the sample according to recipe. This recipe is the look, not the province look. It's the we cited the city or the countryside look recipe with the local habits and the committed. The committed was distribution in this 12 food. After that, in each province, compensated sample for each food category was prepared according to food consumption. That means we polish sample with the proportion for this kind of food consumption data. After then we get each food category food compensated sample. Besides the compensated sample, also we kept all the individual sample. All the individual sample and the compensated sample, we ask the blending to the mixing very well. Then was shipping to CEPSA laboratory with cold chaining transport. That was less than 26 degrees. Then after that, then we have the laboratory analyze. Do we analyze the individual sample or compensated sample. Almost for total data studies, we actually got the pooled sample that was the mean value. So for the depends on the cost, depends what we would like have. For example, most example expensive sample, for example, analyze the dioxin, we must use the pooling sample. If for the heavy metal, then we analyze individual sample. So that means first we depends on the cost, and the second is we respond for the request of authority for the risk assessment. Ask what we to do. So the analysis conducted by our laboratory or the network level of for safety risk assessment, we call the China National for Safety Monitoring National Reference Laboratory. Then what we have the determine for elements, we have the heavy metal. Then we have the nutrients element. We have the rare earth element, and for the element, sometimes we need to analyze the species. For example, mercury and inorganic arsenic. And the pesticides, we are make the quantitative determination almost 240 chemical, and then for the quantitative determination use screen method, we almost 700 chemicals. For ordinary drug, we almost analyzed 200 chemical, and for POPs, we analyzed the PCDD, PCDF, PCB included the long dioxide PCB and the PCB. We have the PCDE, HBCD, TBPP, PFAS, and the short and mid chaining CP. Of course, we included that was the have the precedent we call it the persistent organic chloride pesticides. And then we have the biotoxin, for example, phototoxin, mycotoxin, alkaloids, and we also have other food process contaminants. For example, PHP, we have the nitrate and the nitrate, and for acrylamide, chlorpropylene and ethylene, phthalate, and their metabolite, and even we analyze the trans-fatty acid. Then for the nutrients, besides the nutrients element, we also analyze protein, fat, and vitamin B. Vitamin. After we finish the analysis, then we do the dietary assessment. Have the two approach. One approach was the just point assessment. We call it deterministic assessment. We use the standard adult male exposure assessment in each price. We got the composition concentration of the substance analyzed. That was polling people. We got what was the just mean value. Then we use the adult male food consumption data that we call the standard man. This together we got the average body weight of the adult male in China from last Health China and the Nutrition Service. We updated always this data and then assess the average dietary exposure for adults in China. And in the morning, have asked, do we can do the publicistic assessment? Yes, we can do. First, just because we have for the conception data was the individual. In the individual, even for the composition analyzed data, that contaminants was the mean value, but for the conception was individual, then we can have the distribution, we can have the use the Monte Carlo model and the bootstrap, get the varies and the uncertainty. Actually, not only the composite, and now we can have the individual food to analyze. For example, cadmium and the lead. Then we have the 1,000 individual sample to analyze. Then we got the distribution. We got the Monte Carlo and the bootstrap to the individual body weight, and we do have some publicistic assessment, but this only can do in the chip analysis. If the dioxin, it's difficult to do that. Okay, after this, then we just after all this assessment, then we publish the data. You see, for the fourth, for the fifth, we published in 2015 and 2008 in Chinese published house. Then we are in Chinese and English. So you can got this data both in Chinese and English. And in Chinese total data study, we started in 1990. The methodology and the result, everything was published. And the third one, for the publish, we just underway. And so then we go to the another where go to the plan the seventh Chinese total data study. We published our data in the most in the EST, Environmental International, Chemistry Fair, and Food Chemistry, Journal Agriculture of Food Science, and Science of Total Environmental Actual, and much for the new nutrients. For example, salt. We measured the sodium. Then these results we published, asked by the American Journal of JAMA, and for the audio was published the Journal of Nutrition. So that means we are related what we are interested. Just morning have asked for the salt. Can we evaluate it? Yes. First, we go to the family to which the committed, especially every day for the salted, and if to see that Chinese reduce the use of salt is successful, but we measured in the dietary experiment by sodium, it seems they changed from the salted, changed the salted into the, for example, in China, we have the soya sauces. That was have the salted. So the tasting not too much changed. That means if you just weighted the salted, it's successful. But for the sodium, still not good enough. Then these results much interesting. So that why the JAMA asked me to publish over there. And finally, just some example. What we have done. You can see if see the trends for cadmium, then that means we are not control very well for cadmium. The data experiment is increased for the Chinese total study this 20 years. And only after we have the stretch the enforce the maximum limits, then they go down. If you can see the what we have the contribution, most come from the Chinese rice, and especially for special province. Even one province just use the Jagfa 25 microgram per kilo body gram PMTI. Still, the average is above the PTMI. So that means China, we still need to got the contribution. And then we just do the public stick assessment, then find about 2% individual was the access to the PTMI. So that means in China, we set up our maximum limit was 0.2, not follow CSC 0.4. That means we, in the cadmium maximum limit, we are strict compared to CSC standard. And but we still was a little bit less lower higher than for EU standard. EU standard was 0.15. And second thing, we just do the point estimate for the discount assessment for PCTD, PCTF, and Dioxin like PCB together. And you can see for the highest value, if compared to WHO PTMI, then that's okay. But we do have some cost area. Have the diet intake was high than EFSA set up the highest value. And most important is just in China, then for dioxin, we are not have traded to reduce too much. And also we do some public stick assessment. This just based on the diet conception distribution. Just because we are analyzed for the contaminants was the mean value. But for food, we are much diversity. Then we are also can find the different age, have the different interesting. And third one, we just have the
Excuse me?
PFS, then we
Can you hear me?
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
have 5 minutes left. It's okay for you?
Okay. That's okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. And you can see we compare to the EFSA health value. We are most was okay, but we have some province was above the EFSA health value. Okay, then we have quite a lot of potential emerging contaminants. For example, for the polychlorinated and for DON, for aflatoxin, for fipronil, and for Chinese total diet studies, we have the almost was the 20 or 30 years. Then that means we can see the traded for the late. We are work very well for the control, especially after the 1997, China stopped the lead in the gasoline, then dramatic to reduce. But for the cadmium, as I previously said, it's not well controlled. So that to replace what situation in China for the and for the policy, for example, then the Miami events, why just have the 2008, just we can make a record. In 2000, it's much lower, just background for the Miami. In 2007, we retreated in just the Hebei, that was Sanlu area, was much higher. After we have control, Miami get down, so that we can make the storage sample to check what happened. And for the sorted ideation in China, most people said because you are added the sorted, then it's accepted sorted ideal, then reduce the sorted cancer, but it's not epidemiology. We have seen the sorted if in the age for the woman childborn age, they are if see the UL not too much, but still have the meanwhile idea still have 30%, even USI. And second thing, we use the total data study, the Cochrane before the Cochrane and the Cochrane compare. Then we got the ideal Cochrane lossy rated was the 24 So that we use this to revise Chinese maximum limit. For example, W1 and V1, then according to all the data, then we to revise it. And all this we are most meet to Chinese total data to JAGFA, to the James Food data, then use the JAGFA, then JAGFA reported quite a lot. Use Chinese total data and for the contaminants data and the dietary exposure data. And we make all the contribution. Thank you.
For this very interesting presentation. I think that we can now all appreciate the difficulty to perform a TDS in a so large country.